Hello all, good morning. So yesterday we were discussing about like what is abstract classes and how do we handle the abstract classes and how do we create the objects and all. The access modifiers also we have discussed and uploaded the classes also. Okay. So today we'll be discussing about
Shriman, can you please just once again briefly tell about the abstract classes once again?
okay.
In short, yeah.
Yeah, as we discussed, like abstract classes, there are set of rules that we have looked into it, right? So what is abstract class? If we are hiding the implementation and we are not sure about the implementation, then we are going to go with the abstract classes. We are marking it as like a abstract methods. Okay. So if any method, so these are rules. If any one of the method is marked as like abstract, then that class is declared as like abstract. So abstract classes can have both concrete and abstract methods. Okay. So we cannot create object for the abstract classes because abstract classes will have the abstract method. So we need to implement that and so that we can create the object for that. And abstract classes can have a constructor with that constructor, like, whichever class going to implement the behavior of that particular method, and or else we are creating the object for that abstract class that should provide the, or else that should initialize the instance variables of the abstract classes. So method declared as like private, final, static along with the abstract is invalid combination. Okay, so this we cannot do because abstract itself says that we have to implement it somewhere whenever we extend that particular class. Okay, so abstraction, data abstraction is kind of like we are hiding the details of that particular implementation. Okay, we have looked into the things like here we can see we have created the abstract methods. Here you can see this is like abstract method, and we don't have body to that. Okay, so just to say that abstract is like data hiding it. Okay, data like not hiding but implementation part that we are hiding from it. Okay, data abstraction only we are hiding the implementation of it. Okay, so another thing is like we will be discussing about like encapsulation. Okay, encapsulation is like kind of encapsulation. Just let me write this. Okay, so encapsulation is kind of like we are going to encapsulate everything. Okay, class is kind of like a container. Okay, in that container you can see everything is encapsulated. Let us take a capsule. Okay, medicine capsule. So in that you can see all the data. Okay, so whatever we are trying to put as part of like one unit, that will be encapsulated. Okay, so simple example is like when I go to the screen here, I can show you like here you can see. So class itself is called a encapsulation. Okay, so class name. Data members, we have data members here. So it can be a variables and we can have statements, blocks and methods. So all these things are like kind of like encapsulated. It's kind of like put it as like a single unit. Okay, to achieve this encapsulation, see for example, now what we are trying to do is like we want to like encapsulate the data, but I want to have some kind of like I'm just preventing the implementation directly. Okay, preventing or else overriding some values. Okay, so overriding some variables. Okay, so some variables. So what I'm going to do is like I'm going to use to achieve this encapsulation. I'm going to use getter setter. Okay, so getter setters would be used to just set your value and get your value. Okay, get your value. Okay, but variables, what if we are trying to do is like we want to avoid the implementation of that particular variables, whatever we have defined as part of our classes. Okay, so to avoid variable implementation, variable overriding, otherwise you can say that overriding. So how do we achieve this is like we have a method, we have few methods which we call it just like a getter and setter. Okay, so with this we are going to achieve the data encapsulation. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is like I'm going to create a class, call some student, or you can take any other class, employee vehicle or something. Okay. So just I'm taking a student class here. So what are the things that we can have as part of a student? So we can have student, yes, ID, and we can have string, so name, and have string underscore college or branch. Okay. So now these are the variables. What I'm going to do is like just I'm going to create certain method. Okay. So public void display. I want to display the name, ID, and branch of this particular student. Okay. But I want to limit the scope of this particular variable initialization. Okay. Whatever I'm trying to initialize is like I'm going to limit it to the class, this class itself. Okay. So as we discussed, like how do we access the private members of the class? So we have to have some kind of methods wherein it's going to expose the behavior. Okay. Now you see what I'm going to do is like I have this private string. So for example, now you see I'm trying to give the ID 123. Here 123. Sorry, Srikanth and match is like some CSC. Okay. So now this is fine. Now I'm not allowing the other classes to other classes. Okay. For example, now you see if I try to access this variable will be access to this. But if I try to override it, okay. For example, you see what I'm going to do is like I'm going to create another class here. Let me create implementation class here. The other class I'm trying to access this members. Okay. Let me call this class as like a student. Come here. Meeting history is equals to new student. Okay. So st dot. Now you see what I'm going to do. If I'm making this like a, this is kind of like a, it's a public, so I'm going to able to access it. As we spoke about like access modifier, right? See, how about this private variables now? I'm not able to access them. Okay. So what I can do is like if I want to set something, okay, for example, I'm going to create method called public void set yes ID. So this dot student ID equals to something s underscore see what I'm trying to do is like now I'm just masking this. Okay, I'm not allowing this particular variables to get initialized. Okay, from any of these classes. So what I need to do is like to access them, I've just created a set method. Okay, so this set method now what it does is like now you see, so it is like it will allow me to set the value. How do I set the value now? Dot set ID. Okay, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now point called set dot display. Okay, so now how I'm going to do is like system. Yes. Let's go and try to execute this program now. See what is happening? 1, 2, 3, 4. The value, whatever I'm taking is like it's getting overridden. So the thing is like to access this particular methods. Okay, why do we use encapsulation? Encapsulation is like no, we are putting everything together. Okay, kind of like we are just maintaining it a kind of a component. But here the thing is like now I want to initialize or initialize this instance variables, or I want to assign some values to this instance variables. Then how can I do it? Is like we have a getter setter method. Through that getter setter method, I'm just exposing this particular, like I'm just getting exposure of this particular data members of this class to the other class. Okay, so here what I'm going to achieve this, what we are trying to do is like we are going to use a getter setter method. Okay, so getter setter methods is like simply it will hide this particular like what I cannot directly access this, right? So if I try to directly access this, what happens now? SP dot. Now you see, you are able to get only setting this particular, like this method is getting exposed. But how about the value that you never know, right? So you never know what are the different variables that I've defined here. Okay. If I'm defining something as like private, I cannot access outside of the class. That is what we have discussed about access modifiers. So here in this case, it applies the same. But to achieve the encapsulation or expose this particular variables which are declared as like a private, we can use the encapsulation. Okay. So encapsulation. So how do we achieve this is like, see, I've created this as like a setting ID. Okay. To get it, what I'm going to do is like, I'm going to use another method called get ID. Okay. So get s underscore ID. So what it does is like, it's going to return. So what is that actually we are trying to get? So we are going to get this value. Return yes ID. Okay. Now you see. So here I'll not directly use this, but here what I'm going to do is like, I'm going to use a get method. Get SID. Okay. Otherwise you can do is like return some value that will be caught here and you can print it. Okay. So directly what I'm doing here, like now see, setting and getting. Set method is called outside. Okay. So what I'm doing here, like I'm setting the value. I'm setting the value in display. What it is doing is like I'm getting the value. Okay. Getting the value. Now you go and try to execute this program. See what is happening now. You got this 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So from where it is coming now? It is going this display. It is going to this display method and it is getting from value from this particular method. So what it is returning? It is returning the string value. But SID, from where we are getting SID? So here you can see this dot SID is nothing but we are initializing that particular variable. Okay. So here I've taken the default value. Now default values can be overridden. So from where we are doing it? We are doing it from the other classes. How this private variables are exposed? This where private variables are exposed with the help of this public set method or get method. Okay. So this is how we'll be achieving the encapsulation. So there is another way, guys. So I'll just remove this. Now I'll show you. How do we achieve this? Is like, so this is not a good practice. Okay. So what we have to do is like, we need not to initialize these values and we can keep these values like this and we can use getter setter method. So how do we create this getter setter method? What this particular variable is like. Now right click here, go to the sources. You can see there is an option called get generate getter setters. So when you click on this, it will ask you which methods, which variables that you want to make it as the getter setter. Now you can see access modifier also we can put. Okay. So by default, it is showing as like access modifier public. Generate it. Now you see for everything, name and everything, it has already generated. Now what is that we have created? Now you can see that set ID, set s underscore ID. So that I have created earlier, right? Now it is like automatically creating these things for us. So what I can do now? So display is like I want to display ID. Likewise, I want to display get name. That thing is like get branch. See, what is the use of encapsulation? Data encapsulation is like, I don't want to allow others. I want to make something as like a private so that I can secure them. Okay, secure them means this. I'm not allowing other class to do some actions on it, but I'm just allowing them to do with the help of like a methods that I've created within this class. Okay, this class is like these methods are local to these classes. How can I call this methods out of this class? It's like I can create the object here. Okay, I can create the object. Now you can see it is showing like set ID 1, 2, 3 and dot set. Now we are setting them. Okay, so now we are setting them. So likewise, you can call these things multiple times. You can set multiple times whatever the value that you want to try. Okay, so set branch is like CS. You see, Are we able to access any of these private members outside of the class? No. But from where we are trying to access, from where we are trying to set, so we have created a method which is like setting the method, and we have created a method which is like getting a method. Okay. So getting that method details. So here finally we are creating a display method. So display method would be showing all the details of that particular member. Now you see, now it's kind of like you can create it for multiple members. For example, I'm going to, this is like student 1, student 2, Chandu. Okay. So now you see when I go and execute this, I can get student ID, name, branch, student ID, name, and branch. Likewise, we can create a number of students. Okay. So I'm not sure, like I want to, like, for example, if I keep on going like this, see what happens now? It will grow the list, right? So it will grow the list, but I want to do it for thousands of students. For example, if I don't use the encapsulation setter getter method, then this particular class should be written like for the 1,000 students, right? For example, now see what I'm going to do is like I'm going to create student object. Okay. For example, I want to give details of the 10 students. So what I've done now, I've created student array. Okay. Student array. So how can I just say that this is a student 1, student of 0 is equals to new student. Okay, sorry, ST1. Okay. Now we see what I'm going to do is like ST1 0 dot set branch. What is that I want to is like I'm just storing the values now. Okay. For the student 1. Okay. So set ID 1, 2, 3. Zero dot set name. So another thing is like, yes, this is a new thing that I have introduced is like student. We can have object. Okay. So this is nothing but student object has been created. So for example, if you want to have 100 student details, 100 people, like the 100 students are there, then would you be creating like 100 type of like, objects for this particular class? No. Okay. Here what I'm doing is like I'm creating a student object here, student array. Along in that, I'm going to store all the objects. Okay. Array can store objects also, primitive data types and objects. It is as simple as like now you see. So number is equals to new int of some size. Okay. See what I'm doing here. So this one and this one is similar, right? So here like it is a student type, and here it is like integer data type. So this is like it can hold all the student objects. Here it is like it can hold the numeric values. Okay. So likewise we are going to create. Okay. Only it will store the objects of the student variable. Okay. Student, whatever we are trying to create for the student class, those objects only created. Only we can store. For example, if we are trying to create for the employee, for example, employee class is not there, but in case like employee, emp is equals to new employee. Now, if I try to create or else store the values like this, it will not accept. Okay. So only it will accept the student data. It will say that you have to create a new class or else change it to employee class or something. It's going to show like this. Okay. But it can hold only student objects. Okay. So now what I'm trying to do is like I'm trying to create different objects for different students. Okay. Student 1. For example, now you see student 1, I'm creating a object now. So set a branch. Okay, CSC. So now you see, I'm going to do it for 1. Is like 4, 5, 6, and it's like 10. So earlier we have created each object for student class. Now we are not doing it. We are collectively, it's like, we are creating arrays. With that, we are trying to put all the objects in a single array. Okay. So now you see, I'm just going to use ST student. ST1. So now if you want to get the details of it, so how do I get is like sum out ST dot display. So when you say display, it's time. Okay. So we have a display method. Inside that we have this system already it is printing. Okay. Now you'll see, go and try to print it. It will bring the same results here. Okay. So null pointer exception, in this we can discuss, like we have given 10, but we are trying to print more than that. So that is the reason why it is like display, because ST is null. It says like ST is null. Okay. So we need not to worry about it. So this will directly bring in this. For example, if I'm going to put only 1, only 2. Okay. What are we getting? Only 2 student data are coming. So what is happening here is like I'm creating array. Inside that array, I'm going to add all these objects. Okay. So this object is related to this student. Okay. This object is related to this student. Otherwise, if this is similar to the thing that we have created, right? Student. Otherwise, you have to. So likewise, I have to create objects for each and every student. Okay. So instead of doing this, I'm taking this as like an array. And inside that array, what I'm trying to do is like I'm going to store all the objects. Okay. So student is equals to same. This is the same similar thing that we are doing here. Okay. Only thing is like, see. It is similar thing, right? It is similar thing, but what I'm trying to do is like I'm going to store all the objects of that particular student type. Okay, all the object of that particular student type to a student array. Okay, after that I'm trying to do this. So what it does is like it's going to reduce, like here we are going to know that how many number of students that you want to create objects for the student that you want to create, and you want to store it in the array. Okay, so this is also kind of like encapsulation. Now you can see that what I'm trying to do is like I've just created array of students, and inside that I'm going to take one student at a time, and I'm going to set the values of it. So here you see these things are not exposed anywhere. Okay, private things, these things are not exposed anywhere. So even you can make it as like get, also kind of like we can make it as like a private. Okay, so because we don't want to expose these things, only we want to set the values. Now you see the same thing will be achieved. Earlier we were able to access those get methods, but now this get methods will not be accessed, only setting the methods. What you are trying to do is like now we are limiting it, right? So only you are setting the values. You are not allowing any other things to be get exposed. Only thing is like you want to display, set the values and display the values only by creating the object of that particular class. That is nothing but how are we handling these objects now? It's kind of like earlier what we used to do is like this is one object, this is one object, this is one object, and this is one object. Individually we were creating. Now what I did is like I've created a complete array. Inside that array, I'm going to put the objects. Okay, so this is object at the location index 0, index 1, index 2, and index 3. Okay, so like this, I'm going to put them in an array. So how can I achieve this? Like directly you have to create a student, 2 brackets, like square brackets open is equals to new student of 2. Now you can add the ones, like you have created the new object for this particular array object array, and inside this is nothing but the index, right? So this is like 0 index, which is representing the first object, second object. Likewise, we are going to create the number of objects, and after that I'm trying to print the values. Okay, so this is nothing but what I'm trying to do is like I'm implementing the, or else I'm going to initialize the instance variables of this class, which are marked as like private through the getter setter. So this is nothing but encapsulation. Okay, so this is nothing but the encapsulation. So it is very simple, guys. You have to create some variables and right click on it, go to the source, and you can just use the generate getter setter. Now I'm making as like private, getting method is as like private because I can call it in the display method. For example, if you want to expose this, then if you don't want to uh, display, or else if you want to make only, if you want to manage only getter setter here, and if you want to display the details here. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is like I'm going to put this method here, public void display. Now you see getter setter method is like private. So what it is saying is like you have to create a separate method here. Okay, otherwise what we can do is like we can make this one as like a public, because we can expose these methods. We have written this. Okay, yeah. So how can I just display these methods now? You see, I've just set this method, but I have the object, right? Through this object, I have to specify this. How do I display now? I can display here. Let me just go here. So st dot get st dot get st dot get. Okay. Now when I try to execute this, I get the details. Okay, st dot get, yes. So what I'm trying to do is like I'm setting the values and I'm just getting the values here. But which variables that you are setting and getting is like all depends on like type of variables that we have defined here and these getter setters. Okay, so it's like here in this object I'm setting the values, here I'm getting the values. Okay, it's all up to us. Like, how do you want to use? Okay, if you want to take that display method here and only call the display method, that is also possible. Otherwise, if you want to maintain only getter setters here in this class, that is also quite possible that you can do like this. Okay. Okay, it's kind of like encapsulating everything. So data, so this we can like, we are hiding some data here. So what is that data hiding? So these are the things that we are hiding. Okay. So with the help of this concept, we can achieve the data hiding and encapsulation. Okay. Are you clear with this?
Yes.
So try to just create a separate class for this, and what you can do is like you can just create few variables and add the getter setter. Okay, so you can use this. This is like additional thing that I have introduced is like we can create array of objects. We call it as like array of objects. Instead of creating a single object for every class, we can do is like we can create array of objects for this class, and we can create object for each and every array within this particular class. Okay, so with this we can say that now encapsulation is done, and we'll talk about the interfaces. What is interface and how do we achieve this? Interface is not a concept of OOPS, but still we say that it's a component of Java. Okay, so what are the OOPS concepts that we have? We have inheritance, polymorphism, then encapsulation, and other one is like data abstraction. Okay, so inheritance is like acquiring the properties of parent class. Okay, one class to other class. Polymorphism is like we have a number of forms. In that we have two types. One is compile time, another one is like runtime. Compile time is like overloading, runtime is like overriding. Okay, so data abstraction is like abstract. You are hiding the implementation of the data implementation. Okay, so if you are hiding the properties or if you want to hide some implementation of that particular method, then we can use the data abstraction. Encapsulation is like it is also hiding the data members. Okay, this is like hiding the data members. Data implementation, hiding the implementation is like data abstraction. Hiding the data members are like encapsulation. So here what we are trying to do is like we have created a class student and we are hiding the data members. So what is that data members that we are hiding? We are adding these 3 data members, and we are going to get the implementation done with the help of like getter setters. We are setting and we are getting. Okay, so we can still make them as like, you know, private, whatever you want to do is like, for example, if you don't want to expose anything, then what you can do is like, we can wrap everything inside a particular component, and we can give access to some of the, like, you know, whatever you want to do is like, you know, create it as like a method, then you can expose them. So how do we do is like, we can create a display method. You can call the private members inside the display method. Then you create an object for this class and you can access. So that is what we are doing here. And on top of it, what we have done is like, instead of creating object for each and every, like multiple objects for this particular class or particular student, then what I've done is like, I've just taken the array of students. Then what I'm doing is like, I'm putting each and every kind of like, you know, object that I'm creating and putting inside the array. And we are trying to print it. Okay. So this is how we can achieve the data encapsulation. We'll talk about the, are you clear with this, guys? What is data encapsulation? We are adding the data members from the other classes. They are not directly exposed. They are exposed using the object of that particular class.
Yes.
Okay. So now let's go and discuss about the interfaces. Okay. Interfaces. What is an interface? Interface is kind of a class. It's kind of like a, it's like, you know, component, class component. But the thing is like, we have 100%, we can achieve 100% abstraction through the interfaces. Okay. Now you see, I'm going to so now what I've done, see, public interface and interface class example. Okay, so public interface class example. Now what I'm going to do is like, I'm going to create some methods. Okay, public void sum. Okay, see, now I did not specify anything abstract. Okay, so just I'm creating a method. I'm just terminating with that method. Okay, now you see, I'm going to create another method. So here, if I put some body, then it's going to throw the error. So it says like, now you see, abstract method do not specify a body. Okay, so it is like by default, what is the what is that it exactly? You know, internally what it does is like, it's going to say that this particular method has a body. So it's saying like, you know, it's showing the error saying that abstract method does not have the body. So internally, what exactly the structure it is creating is like, see, public abstract. If I say abstract, so is it throwing the error? No. Internally, what it is doing is like, it's going to create the abstract method. This is what it does. Okay, this is what it does. So this is like, you know, we cannot have any kind of a method which have a body to it. Okay, but from the versions like 1.6, 1.8 versions, after this 1. Like 17 or 18, I guess. So in that they have introduced a new thing is called, second guess, let me. I'll show you. So simple is like, so from where we can have the default version is like, so Java documentation. So here, going here, API documentation. API documentation. What is API documentation? And you can type the interfaces. All classes are interfaces. By default, if you say that interface, okay, any of these interfaces, okay, let me just show you that enter. interface. Okay, is interface defined? It's a class object represents an interface type. So here it is like few things that it's going to show up, but the interface is like by default. What is the interface? Interface is like collection of abstract classes. Okay, along with that we have new thing which has been introduced after Java 1.8 is like they are going to allow two things. One is like we can have the static methods. Okay, public static, we are saying that void. Okay, so I want to perform some actions. For example, int a is equals to 10, int b is equals to 20. Okay, so internally what I'm going to do is like a divided b. So now it is allowing. Okay, now you see static. There are two things which will be allowed as part of interfaces. Like one is static method, another one is like default. Okay, default void multiplication. Let's come out a into b. Okay, only these things are allowed. But you can you see that this one is like it is showing something notation. This is nothing but this is declared whenever we are declaring any variable. Okay, so method is like now you saw that we are defining this method and this method is like it is public void. If I say public void sum, then it does not have the body. Okay, so can we have a private method? So let's see that private. I'm going to add something else like private void and add. Okay, so here I'm putting it. Now what it is showing? It is showing the error. Okay, so change. So what it is saying like this method requires a body instead of a semicolon. Okay, so what it says like now we try to add this private method. Okay, so yeah, the other thing is like sorry, yes, here you can see that now we are trying to add this. Let me add it as like something someone a plus b a plus b. So now this private is also allowed. Let me just put something as like private or protected. Okay, so let me just protected void sum2. What it says illegal modifier for the interfaces sum2 only public private abstract default static and strict. So these are permitted. Okay, so these are the things which are permitted. Other than this, now it is like clearly showing the error is like we can have private public only public private abstract default and protected. Okay, so sorry, static public private abstract default and static and strict. So these are allowed. Other than this it will not allow anything. Okay, for example, if I say public, then what it does is like it will ask you to remove the body of it. Okay, so now you see abstract methods do not specify a body, but it is like it's not an abstract method, right? So we are defining it as like a private. Okay, but now you can see that what are the things that we can create as part of interfaces. Like we can have a private methods and we can have static and default methods. Okay, other than this, if you are trying to do anything other than this, it will throw the error. Okay, only public private abstract default and static. So these are the methods, but if you are defining some method as like a public, then that method should not have the body. Okay, if you are providing body, it will say that abstract method cannot have the body. Okay, now you see if you say as like abstract, so this is like contradictory statement, right? So we discussed about like abstract classes do not have the private abstract methods. Okay, if you are making this is nothing but you are stopping it to get overridden or else to get we cannot override the private methods. That is the reason why it will not allow. But here in this case, what it is doing is like it is allowing. So what are the things that we can create as part of interfaces? Is like first is like we can have the abstract methods and we can have the private methods and we can have the static methods and we can have the default methods. So private methods can have body, default and static methods, they can also have the body. But what is the thumb rule for us is like if you are defining any method as like a abstract method, okay, abstract method within the interfaces that should not have the body. It is similar case with the abstract classes. But let's go and try to create the constructor for this abstract classes, interfaces. Now what it is going to do is like it will say. Now what it says is like, see, interfaces cannot have constructors. Okay, interfaces cannot have a constructors. So what are the different rules now we have in case of interfaces? Is like we have different set of things. Okay. So rules of interfaces. Okay. First and basic rule is like that we got. So I directly can paste it. Okay. Then have now only methods, public, private, default, and static interfaces can have only methods with public, private, abstract, default, static, and strict. Okay. So these are the things that we can have. The other thing is like interface cannot see, cannot have methods declared as like private, final, static along with the abstract is invalid combination. Okay. So you can take the same thing here. I'll go here. I'm coming here. So what is that we have discussed? Private, abstract, void test. What it says, illegal combination. Okay, so this is one thing. The other thing is like public, static, abstract one. So let me comment this. Illegal combination. Okay, so there is second illegal combination. If I say the same thing, I'm going to take like final. Again, it says the illegal combination. Only these are the things which are permitted. Other than this, if you are trying to do anything, so it will throw the error. Okay, so these are the rules. So next one is like we cannot create objects. Okay, so it is similar. We cannot create object for interfaces. Okay, so we cannot create object for the interfaces. So another thing is like what we talked about. We cannot create constructor for interfaces. Okay, so these are the differences, guys. Okay, we are talking about like these are the differences. Okay, so now we go and try to do this. Now it is throwing the error. Now you see you have defined int a is equals to 10 and int b is equals to 20. Okay, internally we'll see what happens here when we are defining as like no values to it. Okay, so you see int it is showing like it is error. Okay, it is showing that there's a warning message. Now it says like see initialize a field at declaration. When I just click on it, now what happens? You see internally it's going to create. If internally it's going to add this static final int a is equals to 10. So whichever variables that you are defining as part of interfaces, they will have this public static final. Okay, so we cannot override the value of this particular variable. Now you see, so we can use it, but we cannot override. Now, if I try to go and execute it, it will not execute because this is an interface. It has all kind of like abstract methods. Okay, these all are abstract methods, guys. Okay, so 100% abstraction can be achieved, but the two these are like it doesn't come under the abstraction because this doesn't require any set of object. Static methods does not require any object. So that is the reason why. So this is like out of the context of abstraction. Okay, so this is kind of like exception. And the other thing is like newly introduced is like default. Default is like new thing which has been introduced only for the interfaces. If you go and try to add this default, okay, for example, now we see if you try to add default void add, and if you say here, it's going to throw the error. Okay. Default methods are allowed only in interfaces. It says like default methods are allowed only in interfaces, not anywhere in the abstract classes or normal classes. Okay. So if you don't define anything here, so it's going to say that this is a default. By default, it's going to treat it as like a default method. Now you can see it is showing that method requires a body instead of a semicolon. So why it is showing that if it should be a public or it should be a something else. Okay, change abstract to the abstract classes. Now we see. In case of abstract, we have to in case of abstract classes, we need to specify this as like abstract. Okay, but in case of interfaces, we need not to do it. See, automatically it is adding the abstract. Okay, so this is the difference here. Now you see, if you are not defining anything as like a default, then it will allow. It's kind of like it is automatically adding by internally. It's going to add this particular default keyword. But when we look at this particular method in the abstract classes, if we try to add this default, it will throw the error. So it simply says that default is only allowed in the interfaces. Okay, so why this is allowed? Because there can be like certain cases that we want to only have this as like in a default and it cannot be forwarded. For example, now see, it cannot, you need not any, you don't want to have the implementation for this particular method. In that case, we are making it as like a default. We can access, but we don't want to override it. For example, now you see, I'm going to go here. I'm going to create an implementation class. Okay. If we have interfaces created, interfaces will help you to achieve the 100% abstraction. In that interfaces, all the methods we have defined as like an abstract. Okay. If some methods are like static and default, they can be accessed with the interfaces. Okay. Let us see the implementation of interface. Okay. It's kind of a class. Okay. Now you see, how do you implement the abstract methods of interfaces? We have to use the keyword called implements. Okay. But in case of abstract classes, we use the keyword called extends. But in case of interfaces, we have to use the keyword called implements. Okay. So now we go here, now you see, it will ask you to implement the behavior of the unimplemented methods. So it's showing public void sum and sum. Do we have any other methods which will be defined? Like for example, I'm going to take this one as like a default. Will it allow? It will throw the error because default is only given for the interfaces. So we cannot override it. Okay, we cannot override it. For example, if I put this one as like default, now we see what it says. Change the method visibility to the public. Okay, so cannot reduce the visibility of the inherited method from the interfaces. So now it is like default. We can increase its visibility. Okay, if I say protected, what is happening now? Default cannot be reduced. It's like, its scope cannot be reduced. It says like simply. Now you can see, now if I say public, what is happening now? So we are trying to override. Which method is being overridden? The default method is being overridden. Okay, but when you try to override the static method, that will not allow. Okay, so you cannot make it as like, again, you cannot make it as like a static public static void or something. It will throw the error. Okay, so it says like remove static modifier. Okay, so now you see what is the difference between abstract class and interfaces is like interfaces is like 100% abstraction, whereas abstract classes will have the both concrete and non-concrete. That's the different abstract and concrete methods. Okay, similar things we have like interfaces cannot like other thing is like the difference is interfaces cannot have a constructor. Okay, so the variables that we are defining as part of interfaces are public, static, final, and we cannot override them. Okay, so we can just access them. If you try to override it, for example, see now what I'm doing is like I'm going to create check for this particular class. So for interfaces, we cannot create the object. For the class which is implementing the interfaces, we need to create object for that. Okay. So, the other thing is like, let's take the reference to this particular. Now what it says like, see, casting change type of implemented interface class example. Okay. So now if I change it, then what is happening? It will throw the error. Cannot instantiate the type interface example. Interface class example, because this is the interface and this is the class. We cannot create object for the interfaces. So for that reason, what I'm doing now, I'm going to create object for this class. Now you see what is happening here. When I say IMP dot, you can see you can access the methods of interfaces and you can override the methods of that particular interfaces where we have declared them as abstract and we can call them. Okay. Now you see, if I say A, for example, I have some methods here, int A, comma B. So here, what I'm going to do is like this dot A is equals to some 100. So this context will not happen in this line. Okay? Constructor, we have to use the constructor. For example, I want to override that value. Okay, IMP dot A is equals to 200. So which variable it is taking? This is a variable it is taking, right? If I remove this, if I try to override now, if I remove this, what it is trying to do is like it's going to call the variable from the interface. Now, but the interface variable is declared as like final. So if you are defining something as like final, that cannot be overridden. Okay, so this is like thumb rule. Okay, this is like thumb rule. So we have to add one more scenario is like one more rule here is like we cannot override interface variables as they are defined as final. Okay, so the other thing is like can have default. Okay, here we have already declared, right? We have already defined the first one. We can have only public, private, and default that we have defined. Okay, so this rules, and the other thing is like now you see we have defined a private now. Okay, private. I want to call this one. Okay, so I want to call access this private member. So how can I access this private member? Let's go and try to put it in the static members. Static method. Can I access it? No. The reason is like, see, cannot make a static reference. This is like, what is this? This is a non-static. You cannot call this non-static to the static because static does not require any object. If it is non-static, then we require an object for that. Okay. If I make it as like public, static, private, static void, now it is like allowing me. Okay. Otherwise, how can I access this? This can be accessed using the default method. Now you see, so we can able to access it, right? This is marked as like a private, but still we can access it through the default method. Okay. Now go and try to IMP dot. So what are the method that we have? Multiplication. Just go and execute this. You see what are the things? 200. So 200 from where it is coming now? This is coming and we don't have any A plus B. So what is that we have is like A into B. What is the value of A into B now? A into B is like 10 into 20, 200. And the sum we are calling, okay? But we are not printing it anywhere. So yeah, here we are printing it, right? So we should get two values, which would be, I'll just remove this. I'm going to call directly because we have overridden that method. That is the reason why it is not fetching out two results at a time. Now you see two things, 200 and 30. So it will come here and it will execute this one. And after that, it will go and execute this particular behavior. Okay. So now you see, it's kind of, we are trying to achieve the abstraction through the interfaces. Okay. The other thing that we were talking about, like, how do we achieve this multiple inheritance using the interfaces is like, we can implement a number of interfaces. For example, here we have created one interface and I'm going to create another interface. Like, let me create another interface. Okay, so here I'm going to put something. So these are the things that I'm going to put in the interface example. B1. Okay, we have some method. Comma Now you see, we can able to, but now you see, there is a method which is sum, which is already available in this interface example, and it is same thing is available in the interface class example. Okay. So which sum method will be overridden first? I say I'm going to remove the implementation. Like for example, I'm just going to remove this. Okay. Remove all these things. It will throw the kind of like it will ask you to implement. See, add unimplemented methods. When I just click on it, so from where it is coming now? Someone. Say implementation of interfaces. Implementation of interfaces. Whichever interfaces, see, it is coming from implementation of interfaces because we are overriding it. But if we are trying to remove this, now you see, the type implementation must implement the inherited class, add unimplemented methods. Otherwise, you have to make it as like abstract. This is another thing that I'll tell you. How do we make it as like abstract? Now we say add unimplemented methods. Here it's showing like this method is being implemented from the interface. From where we can get it now? If we check here, it's going to show you like this is the override symbol. But when you just mouse over on this, it will show that implementing from which interface? It is implementing from the interface class example. Okay, whichever interface we are taking it first, it's going to take from that particular interface itself. Okay, so now if we have this duplicate in the interface example, but still it will take this method which is from the sum. Okay, which is from the interface class example, and the method is like sum. Okay, now you see, so this is taking that. Here we are trying to take the or else implement the methods which are defined as part of interface class example. We are defining it first step, like this is the first one in the row. It will pick the methods which are like it will pick the methods from this class if that method is already available in the interface. Okay, so both common methods available in the both interfaces, but it will take it from the first interface first. Okay, now next one is like I can see it is taking it from the interface class example. For example, now you see I'm going to remove this subtract from this class interface. Sorry, it's not a class, it's an interface. Okay, so I'm removing subtract from this interface class example, and I'm putting it here in the other interface. Now you see we have two methods which are unimplemented. Now I'll go here. Now you see it will show you it is implementing it from from where it is implementing interface example, but here it is implementing from the interface class example. Okay, from the interface class example. Okay, so if you have any duplicate methods that we can still go ahead and implement body for that. But in case of the inheritance, multiple classes cannot be extended. Okay, so here you can see if you try to extend multiple classes here, so here you can see implementation is like can be done, like we can implement a number of interfaces. But in case of, for example, if you are trying to extend the abstract class, okay, so this is class is marked as like abstract class. Now I'm trying to extend this. It will ask you to add the constructor, so we have to pass the parameters to this t3. Okay, see, this is the thing which we brought it from which class it is coming. It is coming from the abstract class. Okay, from which now what is happening now? See, it is we have a sub and sum from the abstract classes also. First, it is taking the preference of the abstract classes, and if something is left in this, for example, we have some division. Okay, so we are making it as like a, I'm not defining it as like a static now. I'm just defining it as like a abstract. Okay, remove this. So when I say this, here I'm going to now we have what is that? In abstract class example, we have public void division. Okay, so when I go here, Where is that interface example class? I just closed it of the implementation. Now you see. So what is happening? Where is the division now? Where is the division? So interface has the division, which is marked as like a abstract. Okay, which is marked as like a abstract. But still I don't see it here. So what can I do that? What can I do to get it? Here is like we can go and try to click on this, right click on the method, right click on the class wherein you are implementing and extending the abstract class and go to the source. And here you can see there is override and implement methods. Okay, so override and implement methods. So which method that you want to implement? Here you can see you can have like there are methods which it will show. Okay, so abstract class division, and there are like other methods that is available. Okay, let me just do one thing. I'll just remove this divide also, because why this division is not coming as part of like interfaces, like we have already have this method implemented in the abstract class, which is like a concrete method, but here we have the method which is like a abstract method. Okay, so both of them are like clashing here, and it will take the priority here. Now if I remove this one, it will show the error. Okay, so remove it, try to go to the implementation class. Now it will show the error because there is one method which is in the interface and you are not overriding or implementing that particular. When I say unimplemented, add that unimplemented method, it will show you the division also. Okay, for example, this, see, in some cases, some versions of the Java, if this is not shown, like for example, we have interface. In that interface we have abstract methods. Those methods, abstract methods, are not shown for overriding. What you can do is like, I'll show you another method, another way of doing it, and doing it through the Eclipse is like right click on it, go to the resources, and you can select the override implement methods. Click on it, it will show which method we can override. Okay, so it is showing like division. When I say okay, now this will be taken as part of like override. Okay, so this is lengthiest concept, guys. So let us do one thing. I'll just stop it here, and so instead of extending all those things, so this will like a little cringy for you. So I'll just remove everything. Only we'll talk one thing at a time. Okay, so about the interfaces. So I'll talk about like how can we achieve multiple inheritance using the interfaces in Java, and other thing is like what are the things that we have to put, when do we need to put extends and when do we need to put implements, and can we extend multiple interfaces at a time, and can we extend multiple classes at a time. So that we'll discuss. Okay, so extending multiple classes is not possible. That is nothing but multiple inheritance is not supported in Java, but multiple inheritance is supported through the interfaces. Okay, now you can see what I'm trying to do here. Do you see? We have two interfaces defined here. So implements, I'm putting comma and I'm trying to implement other interfaces. But in case of classes, we cannot extend more than one class at a time. Okay, so to make it simple, guys, what you need to do is like, it's kind of like assignment for you. Create one interface. Okay, create one interface like this sample interface, add a variable, two variables, and add some abstract methods first. Okay, so this is like very simple interface. What is complex interface is like, now complex interface will have default method, a method declared as default along with the body, and a method declared as like a static method along with the body, and a method declared as like a private method along with the body. Okay, so here you can see this is only simple interface. But what is complex? What are the other things that will be allowed as part of interfaces? Like we can have private methods, and we can have default methods, and we can have static methods. Okay, so I'm going to add one more static method, public static void stat method. Okay. So static does not require objects, so we can call static method with the interface also. Directly we can call the static method with the help of the interfaces also. How do I call it? So I can call interface class dot see as the statement. Okay, because this does not require any object, so we can call the static methods or static blocks or static members of any interfaces or classes using the class name or interface name. Okay, so though it is abstract method, though it is interface, though it is a concrete method, we can call it directly without creating the object. Okay, so if I try to use this object, it will give the, it's kind of like, it will give the warning here. Okay, OMP dot. So what it is doing now, the method is undefined for the type implementation or interfaces. Okay, so we cannot call it this, but we can call with the help of like interface. It's giving the warning message over there. Okay, so now you can see we can call it through the interface name. Okay, so this is important, guys. The other thing is like we'll talk about the other things. We already have these rules defined. We already talked about like what is interfaces versus abstract classes. Okay, and extends versus elements. And next is like, if for example, if you don't want to implement any of these methods in this class, then what can we do is like we can make this class as like abstract. That's it. Now it becomes abstract class, so you need not to implement the unimplemented methods of these interfaces. Okay, still you can have this extend and you can extend the abstract class also. Depends. Okay, so it's adding the concept to that. Now you see, do you have any methods displayed here? Any methods displayed here? No. The reason is like I'm not willing to implement or override any of these methods which is defined as like abstract in abstract class or interfaces. Just I can make this one as like a abstract class. This is nothing but an adapter class, what we say. Okay, adapter class. So here you can have few more implementations, and if you want to stop, like there can be hundreds of methods which will be, it should be like implemented. If we are defining them as like a abstract in the abstract methods, abstract classes are interfaces. In that case, what we do is like we are going to make this one as like adapter class. We'll try to implement few methods here, and again in the original class, for example, which you want to implement for the complete whole set. Okay, for example, if you want to take one class and if you want to implement all of the methods over there or override the methods, then you can create object for that class and you can implement rest of the methods. And if you want to override, you can override. Otherwise, you can just create the object and you can call it. So I'll talk about the adapter classes also. How do we use the adapter classes? Okay, it's kind of like a bridge between abstract classes and the implementation class. Okay, so this is little lengthiest topic, guys, but the thing is like just go through this video and try to understand. We have defined only two interfaces today. One is like one interface has like method which has like defined as like abstract, and we have variables. Inside that we have a private, default and static methods which we have defined, and in the other interface we have defined a simple thing is like only variables and the abstract methods. And after that I've created implementation class for this. Let me just remove this and I'll not confuse you with this. So I'll remove this things also and I'll put the implementation. Okay, so first thing is like I'm just implementing one interface at a time, so I need to add body to this abstract methods. So after that, we were discussing about like multiple inheritance. How do we achieve the multiple inheritance? So through the interfaces, we can implement a number of interfaces. Okay, now you see interface example. When I say this, I got the okay. So these things are getting over here. So if any of the methods which are repeated in both of these interfaces, so what it does is like it will take from the sequence. Okay, so sequence, I mean to say that if sum is available here, sum is available here. First, it will take sum from this particular interface. If it is not available, then it will go and try to implement the behavior for this particular method in the interface. second interface. Okay, if anything is like, anything which requires implementation in this interfaces, this class, it's like it's going to throw the error. For example, now see, when I say this, it still say that there are some unimplemented methods that you have to implement. So from where it is coming? It is coming from the interface example.sub. When I say yes to it, it will add this particular method along with the board. Okay, with this we have mostly completed with the interfaces, abstract classes, and OOPS concepts. And probably tomorrow I'll just recap this, and after that I'll jump onto the exception handling. What is exception handling, and what are the different exceptions that we have, and what is errors and all that we are going to discuss tomorrow. Okay, so after exception handling, I'll just give the heads up, guys. After exception handling, we have file handling. After that file handling, we are going to jump into the collections. Okay, with this probably we'll be finishing this in 2 or 3 days. So core Java will be done, and after that we'll be going ahead with the Selenium. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for your time, guys. Let's meet tomorrow at same time, 8:30. Okay. So there was a glitch today, so I could not able to connect at 8:30. But tomorrow I'll connect at 8. Thank you, guys. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.